Thank you very much, Ayush. I know that while Sana does a good job, no one can beat you at your job. So there's no chance of artificial Ayush coming on stage ever. So thank you very much for that. Sandip, very warm welcome. Thank you very much for the time. And I'm going to request everyone in the hall to kind of settle down. We'll try and utilize these 29, 30 minutes that I have with one of the foremost technologists in India to get a perspective on AI, because through the day, through the evening today, there are multiple different conversations, so that we'll try and focus on some points. And what Sandip and I did was to drill down and come to an agreement on what are the broad contours of our conversation. So once again, requesting everyone to settle down as I get on today's conversation with Sandip. Sandip, while we were chatting before this session, you said something very, very interesting. You said technology is a sutradhar. And I want you to start by expanding on that in the context of AI, because sutradhar is a timeless word. Why do you believe in that?
So let me just put it in context. When I coined this term, it was mostly because we had just come out of COVID, and clearly technology was serving as a sutradhar. It was keeping people connected. It was keeping communities connected. It was actually connecting, different countries as well. And it was driving certain services. So when I think about AI in that same context, AI in many respects is bringing technology a lot closer to everyone. So in some respects, I like to now think about, if we think about Viksit Bharat coming for 2047, this becomes, AI actually starts to herald the Naya Daur of technological revolution. And this notion of Har Ghar AI is something that we can actually make real. As a matter of fact, it is happening to a certain extent, but it is clearly something that has the power to create technology and democratize technology for the masses, for citizens services, bring it all the way down to, rural areas and make a difference in terms of how people, are equipped with the right information to make decisions themselves. We keep talking about AI as artificial intelligence. I like to think about it as augmented intelligence. It is clearly something that actually enables you to make better decisions, to be a lot more informed, and that actually can happen at any part of the society, whether it is urban, rural, and it's actually in the rural areas where you can actually do a lot more with it.
That's interesting. You can do a lot more in rural areas. We'll come to that, but I want to pick up the point about Viksit Bharat that you introduced into it. And I don't know how many here in the audience can connect with the fact that we are doing high technology discussion. We are discussing AI, which is the frontier, with a company which many decades ago was actually barred from being in India. So, how much India has come from then to now is also a testament of how much our country has changed. You said augmented intelligence. If we have to have Viksit Bharat by that deadline, it also means that we have to be Atmanirbhar India. Atmanirbhar in terms of technology, in terms of manufacturing, to a large extent Atmanirbhar in terms of energy. That is why the non-conventional renewable energy thrust that we have, and so many others. Given our past experience and previous understanding that in many technology environments, India ended up becoming a user nation rather than a producer or manufacturer nation, are you confident that in AI we will not miss the bus from that particular perspective? And will that help us really achieve Viksit Bharat?
So let me make a statement, and then I'll try to give you data points to support it. I truly believe that India can become the AI capital of the world. And it can become an AI capital of the world across many different dimensions. So let me give you a couple of empirical data points. Very recently, we did a AI adoption index survey. And we basically surveyed companies around the world in terms of where they were in terms of adopting AI as a technology, not just experimentation, but also at scale. Interestingly enough, 59% of all companies that were surveyed in India, they said that they were doing something or the other with AI, which, by the way, was the highest percentage across all the countries that were surveyed. So an indicator that says 59% actually are doing something with AI. The other interesting...
There's no participation bias in this survey, right? You had an equal number of respondents, mostly
equal number of respondents across the board, right? Different countries. And in addition to that, 27% of companies in India said that they were thinking about and they had plans to move forward with AI. So when you think about that number, what that means is this is a technology that is not only recognized, but people are doing something with it.
So almost 86% of your respondents...
They are doing something or the other with AI.
What are they doing?
So the interesting piece is that most of them are experimenting with AI. Only about 26% are doing things at scale. So the place where we have an opportunity to do a lot is to drive this at scale, not only across companies, but also at a government level, where we can use AI very effectively for citizen services, which in many respects the government is doing through the India AI mission, where they have actually allocated, I think, if I remember right, 30 to 40% of the total outlay, which is fairly significant, is for the development of use cases for commercial and citizen services. So if you bring those two pieces together and you stay the course in terms of really driving relevant use cases that can be used at scale both for commercial applications and citizen services, we truly have the ability to be one of the top in the world. Now that is one data point. Let me give you a second data point. If you look at our demographic dividend, in about 2 or 3 years, we will have the largest volume of employable youth in the country. If that demographic dividend is skilled appropriately, we can truly become the skill capital of the world for not only AI, but for any kind of technologies.
Okay, you've given me a lot to unpack, so let me try and do this bit by bit for the benefit of the audience as well as all those who are watching us across Business Today platforms. We sort of counted 86% of your respondents have something to do with AI. What about the other 14%? Are they kind of sleepwalking through it, or
they probably need to wake up pretty soon, because this is, I mean, honestly, this is here to stay. I think a lot of people ask me whether are we still in the hype phase, and you know, my contention, based on what we are seeing everywhere, and I'll give you a few examples as well, we are past the hype phase. This is here to stay, and I'll actually connect the dots to what CP was saying, that today I think if each of us, whether we are, you know, we have a technical background or not, if we don't learn to work with this technology, we are going to be, you know, it's going to get ahead of us.
Since you have this very bullish assessment, and you know, if we were doing a stock related discussion, we would probably see the stock react to his very bullish comments, but we're not doing that. But I want to ask you, on the other hand, there are also some doubts about whether the hype around AI has gotten ahead of reality. I've been reading international commentary on this. How would you explain that to the lay audience?
So I would, rather than trying to explain the hype around it, I will tell you what data is showing us. So this adoption index we did, we actually asked a follow-up question as to why are people not scaling AI? And there were 3 primary reasons that were highlighted. The first one was the level of trust in AI. 71% basically said that for AI to be useful, it really needed to be trusted, and they were not sure if the way they were going about it, the way the data that they were using, or the tools that were using was truly going to get them to trusted AI. And I'll touch on that in just a second. The second area that people talked about was the skills. Whether, you have enough skills. And interestingly enough, there was a recent BCG and IIM Ahmedabad report that just came out, which said only 4.5% of the total world's AI professionals are in India. Now, if you think about the demographic dividend we have and the amount of skilling that we can do to really change that number, that can be pretty significant.
Does this skilling need an engineering degree in AI, or is it an add-on layer to basic engineering qualifications or related fields?
Okay, I'm going to say something that's probably a little controversial, and a lot of people feel that you've got to be an engineer to get into AI. I actually feel it's all about aptitude and whether an individual has an aptitude. And the reason I can say that with a fair bit of conviction is 97, 98% of our CSR investment goes into skilling. And we actually, we were one of the first to offer an AI curriculum at the CBSE level for 11 and 12. And the kind of use cases that I see coming out of that cohort, who are not engineers, these are school kids. And as a matter of fact, about 2 months ago, we had our CSR annual event, and the winner there for the AI challenge that we had done was actually a group of 2 kids from school kids. One was 10-year-old. He was 10 years old. And he was paired with a senior who was probably in class 9 or 10. And they had actually created, using our platform, they had created an AI solution for testing the soil moisture and advising farmers on how much to irrigate. AI solution.
A round of applause for that.
Here we go.
We would all applaud a 13-year-old cricketer getting into IPL. We should also applaud this example of a very young person.
We have, through this program, so I'm actually very proud of this program. First time I saw these competition results, I actually had tears in my eyes because there were girls who were in class 9 and 10 who were building drones. So to your point about, technology is such where I think if there is aptitude, we can train them.
If there is aptitude, we can train them, and that's distinct from having a formal degree. I want to go back to your statement, and you said India, Bharat can lead the world in AI. I have tracked 2 earlier technological revolutions, evolutions, call it what you may. One was Y2K, and we saw the birth of and the strengthening of India's software services industry. I've also very closely tracked the initial, I would say, from the days when the first few hundred telecom towers on so-called 2G technology were laid out, and right up to the point that we see it today. The debate around AI constantly brings up this one question, and I'm reminded, I don't know how many of you follow Elon Musk on social media. If you have even the remotest interest in AI, please do follow him up and check one of the comments that he has just made 24 hours back. Somebody said, his AI engine is going to have 1 million GPUs. He responded to that, no, it will be 1 billion. Now, Sandip, the question is, are we going to be a user, just as we saw we had some of the most extensive telecom networks, but very little of that being actually manufactured till a few years ago in India. Y2K, we were just a service nation working on imported machines and don't get me wrong on this, basically doing a lot of coolie coding work. In AI, are we going to be a GPU nation or are we going to be a user nation?
I think we're going to be both. And I like to put it in context of data and work that's currently going on. So I think today India is really driving the mission on AI, but in parallel, they are also driving the mission on semiconductors. Semiconductors is what will make AI happen, ultimately, through the creation of GPUs, chips, and all the rest of it. That's one side of the story. So I think if we stay our course across that, we will progress both AI and then really driving AI through the right kinds of GPUs.
But since you said semiconductors, it's not from a manufacturing point of view. We are a design powerhouse. That is absolutely 100%. But we are not manufacturing semiconductors.
But we are hopefully we are getting there.
Okay.
With where the semiconductor mission is going.
Okay.
We've
So in GPU terms, how should we understand this?
So on GPU terms, I think we look at it from two perspectives. Number one, clearly there will be the need for GPUs for this technology to run. But I think there is this notion where we are saying, we need 1 million GPUs or 1 billion GPUs. Those GPUs are predicated on the size of these language models that we are running.
Okay.
Right? So we are fascinated by these large language models. I think the era that we are starting to see this technology transition to is the era of small language models as well. So I'll give you an example. Today, your large llama models and others, they have 70 billion, parameters, trillion parameters. The more the parameters you have, in just in layman's terms, the bigger these models are and the more the parameters are, the more computing power you need to run them. The more it costs,
more energy you need.
The more energy it uses and all the rest of it. One of the things that, we have been very strongly advocating, and actually we've put it to practice, is the creation of small language models. And the way you think about it is when you need a nano to carry two people from point A to point B, you don't need to have a luxury bus to do the same thing.
So are you saying that there is a possibility of an Indian jugaad, frugal engineering around LLMs? Will there be like a India-specific model?
I think India-specific models are already happening. We have the CEO of Bhashani sitting here.
Yeah, and we'll have him on the stage just
there
in
are
a while.
There are several companies like startups like BharatGen and others who are building. Fractal is another one that is building smaller models. And one of the things that we have learned as we have innovated, and this is something that we do in India, for India and the world, so a lot of this development happens for us in India itself, is the creation of small language models. So we have created its whole family of granite models, which are not only small and more efficient, they are much fewer parameters, fit for purpose models. But now we are actually democratizing them by moving them to open source. Because longer term, we are of the firm belief that, just creating proprietary models is not going to work. You're going to have to put them in the hands of the developer community. So we've not only put it in open source, but, through our Red Hat platform, we've actually created a toolkit that enables developers to very quickly modify and extend these models and make them more fit for purpose for different needs and requirements.
So are you therefore also saying that analysts and journalists like me should not look at AI infrastructure from a scale point of view alone, but we should look at it as there could be very small models, there could be mid-size, and there could be possibly large-scale models?
Absolutely. What do you need it for? And what are the use cases required for?
Okay, great point on use cases. What does AI mean for the bottom 400 million, 40 crore odd people in India who continue to need a lot of social support, who are, whose socioeconomic conditions perhaps need a lot of effort? What can AI mean for that section of our society?
So I think rather than try to put it in words or theory, maybe I can share a couple of examples. So recently, through some of our CSR work, we had a solution that someone came up with, where they were offering a way for a group of artisans who are making agarbattis in the state of Rajasthan to start to look at pricing across different mandis and portals and whatnot, and then start to create websites and others automatically through to advertise their wares. That's one example. Another example is a few years ago working with AgTech, which is it's an agricultural NGO. We have actually created an AI solution that was enabling farmers to determine how they should be driving irrigation, based on weather data, based on weather patterns, what kind of soil moisturization was there, how they should drive irrigation. But not only that, start to look at price comparatives across mandis that were close to them using geospatial things, and then figure out where they should go and sell their produce, right? So these are the kinds of things that will benefit the common man in many ways. And when you pair that up with language models, like Bhashini and others, you actually start to speak the language of people that, in India, depending on where they live and how they want to communicate.
I'm going to ask this point later on, that what are the various regional language terms for AI. We'll get that in the next session. So let's go back to the point that you made for the common man. Government policy, both at the center and states, has this absolutely open desire to serve the common man. There are political payoffs as well. In terms of the government focus, the central government's focus, and if you want to also share a state example, please feel free to do that. What are they doing to make the most of this moment that you said, can make us a pivotal force in AI across the world?
So I think the way the India AI mission has been structured at a government level, I think is very smart. I think what they've done is they've divvied up the focus across the creation of infrastructure, so having the right level of GPUs and others so that we are not left behind, if you will. Second is promoting startups and others so that we are driving that level of talent and capability in country. But most importantly, I think where there is a significant focus is the development of use cases that can be used for commercial as well as citizen services use. So I think the focus on use cases and using this technology for things that can truly scale is the way I think we will move it forward. While we are on the government and what we are doing there, I think the other area where there is a lot of emphasis, not only at the government level, but also across private enterprise, is this notion of responsible AI. I sort of always say that responsible AI is responsible business. And by that, I mean ensuring that data provenance is there. You know where the data has come from that you're using in your AI. Your results need to be explainable, which means the algorithms and the models and others that you're using, they need to have a level of transparency where you can explain the outcomes that you are looking at. And last, which is, I think, going to become very important as this technology matures, is it needs to be free from bias. It needs to be free from negative bias. And that collectively is going to be really important. So I know that there's a lot of work that the government's doing in terms of policy development around this space. We are firm believers that you should not regulate the technology in itself and the algorithms, but you should hold model developers accountable for how the models are built and how the technology is used. But I think this is an area which will require a lot more development for it to be trusted and used at scale.
How close do you think, from a policy finalization point of view, is India to coming up with a framework, maybe phase one of a framework, because it will evolve as we go along? When do you think that is likely to happen?
I think it's imminent. I think it's already happening. There's a lot of activity going on in terms of, data, the data bill that is been in discussion. I think the Reserve Bank recently came out with a draft directive talking about how the banking community, in the financial services community using AI will need to have a level of governance around it. So I think the movement is there. There are clearly other jurisdictions that have done a lot more in this space, but I think India is actually very close behind.
What's the closest jurisdiction that could be a sort of template for an Indian model?
I think that's a unfair question to, unfair thing to, compare. But look, there's, I think in Europe there are several jurisdictions who are doing it. US, it's a lot more federated than anything else. But, there are jurisdictions in Europe that have moved forward, which I think the key is we should be looking at what are elements that can relate. But it ultimately boils down to how do you drive responsible AI that can be used at scale for commerce and citizen services?
Okay, one final question. We have literally 70 seconds on the clock. If you could turn the clock back in your own life to 30, 40 years ago, when you began your career, when you sort of finished school and engineering, what would you do now to be able to benefit and take the most sort of advantage from the AI boom?
Actually, one of the things I always reminisce about, and by the way, I'm not an engineer. I'm a chartered accountant that's that's learned technology over the years. But I think one of the things that each of us could have done is had that urge and hunger to do something that was not mainstream. I think one of the things I've learned through this CBSE curriculum that we've introduced for 11, 12, it's an elective, right? It's an elective. Every time I go through one of these exhibitions of people who are doing it, I said, I so much wish that we had something like this available. At that time, it just wasn't available. Though, anytime you saw a computer, I used to jump all over it, right? To see what you can do more with. But that openness to sort of experiment with new stuff, I think is going to become very important. I think that's true for all of us. If all of you, and I go back to what CP was saying, if you are not tinkering with AI and then ultimately technologies like quantum and others, start to learn about it because it's here and it's going to move at a much more exponential phase than when we all were growing up.
Absolutely, and learning never stops. And I have learned one new title and possibly another session in the future sometime, AI for Viksit Bharat. And thank you for seeding that idea about how India could lead in the AI era, the confidence and the clarity of your thoughts. I appreciate that. And thank you very much from behalf of Business Today and India Today for taking out the time, Sandip.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lovely
With that, it's a wrap. We'll be back. Ayush, over to a real intelligent anchor.